Okay, imagine for a second the weirdest trampoline you can think of. But instead of bouncing you, up and down, it swings sideways. It even glides smoothly around corners. And, get this, it's less than a millimeter tall, super, super tiny. So picture how it moves. Different bits are moving in different ways, almost chaotic. And right in the middle, there's this, I don't know, like a trampoline within the trampoline, where the vibrations, they follow this perfect triangular path. They actually curve around the corners perfectly. That's just not something you usually see in physics, right?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Especially the efficiency of it.
Yeah, and apparently once it gets going, it barely loses any energy. It just keeps swinging.
Sort of oscillating, yeah. For a very long time, theoretically.
So the big question is, why? Why build this mind-bending little thing? It's obviously not for, jumping on.
Definitely not.
Today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. Why this quantum trampoline exists, what these fundamental vibrations are that it controls so well, and what it could all mean for technology down the road. We've got some really interesting sources to dig into.
Yeah, our goal here is really to unpack how this thing, which sounds a bit odd, is actually showing off totally new ways to move energy around. We're talking about fundamental energy transport with amazing precision. It gives us a real window into quantum vibrations and how we might actually use them. It's about creating these tiny, perfect pathways for energy.
Okay, so let's start there. If it's not for jumping,
Yeah.
what is it, fundamentally?
Well, at its core, it's what we call a waveguide.
A waveguide. Like for light, fiber optics.
Similar concept, but not for light. This one guides phonons.
Phonons, okay.
And it's made from this ultra-thin vibrating sheet, basically, a membrane of silicon nitride. It's incredibly delicate, but also surprisingly tough. And the whole point is how its structure lets it manage these tiny vibrations.
All right, phonons, you mentioned them. For listeners maybe not deep in the physics weeds, what's the best way to think about phonons?
You can think of them as sound quanta, like the smallest possible packet of vibrational energy in a solid. They're the basic units of how vibrations, like sound or heat, move through the crystal structure of a material.
So tiny packets of sound or heat energy.
Essentially, yeah. And being able to control those precisely, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, and that brings us to the design, which sounds pretty ingenious. The physicists who built it, this was a collaboration, right? Constance, Copenhagen, ETH, Zurich.
That's right, a joint effort.
They designed it specifically to steer these phonons around corners, you said, with almost no loss.
Exactly. Minimal loss.
And you mentioned this involves mathematical topology. That sounds complex. How does topology actually do something practical here?
Yeah, it sounds abstract, but it's key. Topology, well, simplified for this context, it creates properties that are very robust, stable. It means the path the phonons follow is protected in a way. It doesn't really matter if there are tiny imperfections in the material. Like, think of a knot. You can wiggle the rope, but the knot itself stays tied. The path for the phonons is topologically protected like that.
Ah, okay. So the path is robust, protected, and the results. The efficiency sounds like the real headline here.
Oh, the efficiency is staggering, really. They managed to guide these phonons around sharp turns 120 degrees, which is quite tight. And the number of phonons that bounce back, that get lost instead of making the turn, it's less than 1 in 10,000.
1 in 10,000.
Yes. Which, as the researchers point out, puts the loss on par with like modern fiber optic cables for telecommunications.
Wow. That's incredible efficiency for something moving vibrations on a chip.
It really is. Usually at these tiny scales, energy loss, scattering, is a huge problem.
So what does that efficiency unlock? You mentioned chips earlier. Is that the main application?
That's definitely a major one. Think about microchips. They're packed with tiny components, right? Signals have to navigate all these tiny corners and pathways. Usually that means losing energy, generating heat.
Which is a big limitation for making things smaller and faster.
Exactly. Heat management is critical. This quantum trampoline demonstrates a way to route energy, in this case, vibrational energy around those corners with almost perfect efficiency. It could lead to chips that are more compact, much more power efficient, maybe even open doors for different kinds of computing, like phononic circuits.
So a whole new way to manage energy flow on a tiny scale.
Potentially, yes. It's a fundamental proof of concept.
And one of the physicists involved, Oded Zilberberg, he designed the actual trampoline structure.
Yes, his specific design based on these topological principles.
He has this great quote about building entire roads for phonons. That really paints a picture.
It does, doesn't it? It suggests not just guiding them around one corner, but creating complex, highly efficient networks for energy or information flow. Imagine circuits where energy just flows exactly where you want it with almost zero waste. That's the dream, the potential of these topological pathways.
It's pretty mind-bending, and this work, it was published recently.
Yeah, hot off the press in Nature, the paper's called A Soft-Clamped Topological Waveguide for Phonons. Shang-Shi is the lead author, with Zilberberg and others.
And you mentioned the collaboration, Constance, Copenhagen, ETH, Zurich, funded by major bodies like the ERC, the German Research Foundation. This was a serious undertaking.
Oh, absolutely. This kind of fundamental research requires significant resources and collaboration across disciplines.
Okay, I have to bring this up because it was in the source material and it's just delightful. Zilberberg apparently mused about building a human-sized version.
He did. He thinks the physics principle would scale up.
But he added a warning.
Yes, definitely wear a helmet if you ever tried to jump on it. I suspect the sideways motion might be a bit unpredictable.
Yeah. Probably wise advice. It just shows the kind of out there thinking involved, from the tiniest scales to, well, human scale. So, to wrap things up a bit, we started with this idea of a strange, tiny trampoline. And we've seen it's actually this sophisticated device, a waveguide, using topology to guide phonons, these fundamental vibrations, with incredible precision, almost zero loss.
Exactly. This deep dive really highlighted how something quite abstract, like mathematical topology, finds very real, very practical applications. It's creating these super efficient energy highways at the nanoscale, which has direct implications for future tech, especially microchips, maybe even quantum systems.
It really makes you think, and perhaps this is the thought to leave our listeners with. If we're learning to build these perfect roads for sound quanta, for phonons, what other invisible stuff, what other forms of energy or information could we eventually learn to control and guide with this kind of amazing precision? What new technologies, what new understanding of the universe might that unlock down the line? It's fascinating to consider.